for coming. Hi. How are things? We are HomeBrew, that's us, and in the next 50 or so minutes, we're going to tell you how we put together our little silly show on the internet, in case that's something you're interested in, but we'll also answer questions, jump in whenever. It's kind of less about us right now, because it's probably more about everyone here. So, has everyone here played a TTRPG? Great. Anyone have a show or stream or a podcast or any of that kind of stuff?
So few places you can ask that question. Everyone here's got a show, right?
Yeah. And is that what you're interested in hearing about? Because we can talk about anything else. Like that's the... Yeah, sure. Okay, no. Yeah. It's sometimes we do something that's very like technically heavy and we see like eyes glaze over, and that's fine because my eyes are also glazing over saying it out loud. But so what we'll cover is if you're thinking of turning your home game into a show for other people, how to find your tone, questions you should probably ask yourself before doing it. The biggest one being why. Why would you do this to yourself? And then everything else.
Especially if you're the DM.
Yeah, a lot of questions like that. So we'll fly through the prepared presentation. You all got to witness us take some time setting this up, and then you're going to see it and go, should they have bothered? And that's fine. That's part of it. So
also, 50% of us haven't seen this yet.
Yeah.
It's going to be real interesting.
You like this a lot.
It's like, oh, that's what we do. Okay, cool.
So, yeah, myself and Ben have done this presentation at Dublin Comic Con before, modified it since, obviously. And the lads were free. Paul King. Should we do names?
We're free.
Yeah.
We normally do it. They were free at the time.
Yeah. But I mean, as in, like, we didn't think to do any prep or anything. I don't think we've introduced ourselves individually, have we?
Oh, we're a collective.
Okay.
We don't exist as people. Yes,
I'm wearing an egg.
from Killian to Wes. Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Keelan Flynn. Have a name tag. And just been playing D&D for a long time, but then with this stream, I don't know what else introduction-wise.
What's your character?
My character, Huck, is in our stream a halfling sorcerer at the start, and then a puka sorcerer, wild magic sorcerer. For storyline reasons, changing entire race was something that had to happen, but I won't get into that in case there's spoilers.
I'm Paul. I play Randir. I also helped tech the show originally, and I've been playing D&D for probably a long time, like 20-something years. DM'd quite a lot of games. Started in Edition 2 and stuff like that, and now rarely plays 5 except for with these guys. So I joined halfway through the stream.
Well, you joined from the start as tech. And then
And then as a character, I joined halfway through. So that was an interesting kind of experience.
Yeah, we'll probably ask you a little bit about that, the experience of joining a campaign halfway through, because there's probably lessons there. My name's Ben. What are your names?
Oh, fuck me, I guess.
We'll get to you. I'm the DM of this show. I know nothing about tech, which is why we have Paul and Wes. Paul, 20-odd-ish years ago, was the first person to introduce me to role-playing games. So we've been playing together for a long, long time. Yeah. Started out the classic kind of elf-dwarf love-hate relationship, and we've stayed in that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Sometimes you don't grow as people, and that's fine. And then,
I'm Wes. I'm one of the co-creators of HomeBrew. My background before working in this is video production, which came in very, very handy with this. I'd started playing D&D maybe a year or two before we started setting this up. We could do a how we met later on, but the short version is Ben was away living in Canada, saw that I'd been posting, I was doing like campaign diary videos for a campaign I was running as a first time DN, and then Ben approached me being like, I have this idea for a show, do you want to make it? Which I suppose we haven't really mentioned. The conceit of the show, if anyone's not aware, is it's set in sort of Irish-inspired folklore and inspired by the beers we're drinking at the table, sometimes wine and gin, when Lucy, who's also on our show, and rum.
The brews play a part in the home brew. That's
it's wordplay. I don't with the beers.
Lesson 1: pick a SEO friendly name. Yeah, that's a good thing to start with. Don't pick something that if someone searches, they'll find how to make beer at home, how to homebrew your own game. We're unfindable.
If you search YouTube while you're logged in as us with the stream open, we won't appear.
Yeah,
so it's not great.
When it comes to branding, pick something not based on the wordplay you think is kind of funny. That's us. Wes forgot to mention that we actually originally met in a Darkness cover band, so that's pretty important.
Is that a hair gag? I'm not really...
No, we played.
Oh, we actually did. I forgot that.
Remember the Darkness cover band we
I
were
think
in?
we're making an obscure joke. We did. We went to the same school years ago. We did a talent show. You played the bass and I played the drums. Guitar.
Yeah.
For, I believe in a thing called Love by the Darkness, which was, as you'd imagine, brutal.
What's the Darkness
Oh,
cover
are you
band
doing this
name?
as opposed to this?
I just checked
Gotcha.
my
Okay, cool.
Thank you for unrepressing a memory, by the way.
Oh.
We can move on from
If you want to see what we do, to see our credentials, we have a live show this coming Tuesday, and then 2 weeks after that, and then that's us done. We're out of here. We literally only have 2 more episodes in the campaign. We're going to take a little hiatus, figure out how we're going to look at production going forward, and then come back for campaign 2. But that's also another thing we can hopefully share information on today.
I think one of the things, we've been running for 4 years.
4 years.
4
Up on
years.
4 years.
I knew that. We started in person filming, streaming out live with all the equipment, all that kind of stuff, having guests physically come join us, some of whom are here at the con. We've also done remote stuff as well. Some people live, some people remote. So we've had lots of dealings with that sort of stuff. So
On the gauntlet.
on the gauntlet, exactly.
Yeah, so we've done in-person setups and streaming setups as well. So if you're interested in the tech side of that as well, we can talk about that.
The reason we're being kind of vague is because there's a Q&A section. So we're just sort of like, what do you call that, breadcrumbing. And it's something you're like, oh, I want more, but ask that question when we get to that section. But without further ado, let's dive into the meat of the panel, which is home games versus like entertainment. That's sort of the theme. And what is the difference? And you might think, well, there is no difference. You just point a camera or put a mic in front of you and your friends. But we found the kind of big difference is in a home game, you're not going to have someone at the window like knocking and going, hey, that was lots of fun. I didn't like the bit where you took a break for 2 hours, ordered pizza.
You got sneak attack wrong again.
You don't have that. There's an audience, hopefully, for your show. So we have sort of 2 rules on Homebrew, both equally important. Rule number 1, we should be having fun. And rule number 2, so should be the people watching. And never at the expense of the other. Because it's important to remember that there are people you won't see or know or hear also at the table, this sort of invisible crowd.
Third party that are at the table.
Yeah, there's an extra spare seat there. And
It's like New York is the 5th member of Sex and the City.
Yes, exactly like that.
That is an old reference.
Yeah.
So when you have that in mind, there are questions you begin to ask yourself in like it's not even a session 0 because they exist in actual TTRPGs, but like a pre-game meeting. And it's like, what is our tone? Because that's pretty important to figure out. What kind of game do we want to run and play? Who do we want to watch us? Because that's probably who are our audience, who are going to be those people at the window going, hey, like what you do, cut out all the number crunching in the middle. And then what do we want to get out of it? I think a lot of people think about the first couple of steps and then realize when they start doing it, they hit sort of the curse of the 3rd episode. And that's like podcasts across the board. It's like you get to 3 episodes and then it's fizzle. So it's how to avoid that is doing a lot of work before you get to do the fun stuff, which is playing with your friends and seeing people's reaction to your stuff afterwards.
I think that's a big part of setting up anything like this. It kind of translates to playing a game as well if you're not planning on doing a show. But as far as I'm concerned, more importantly for a show, look a bit forward into the future. Because if you're just doing a one-shot with some mates or whatever, you can have, as Keelan tends to default to, 3 halflings in a trench coat as your character, but does that have legs beyond your 3rd session? An example I always point back to is, I play our Bugbear Barbarian on the show, and there's a couple of elements of the character that I'm quite fond of, but if we were to go back and know, like, oh, we're going to play this game for 4 years, definitely some stuff it would have changed. Like, this doesn't really have longevity. There's a kind of a secret the character has that's revealed, I think, 6 episodes in, and then there's not
almost
much.
Immediately, because we did 6 episodes before.
So in the show it's 3 episodes.
It's revealed in like episode 0
Yeah.
or episode 1. Yeah.
So that was the interesting gimmick I had for the character that was like, cool, now what? It's like, well, he's a bugbear, isn't that fun? But even like your idea for your campaign, the scope of what you're going to go for, and similarly, if you're just playing with mates, like there's a lot of problems with people, one player at the table is a problem player. It's like, well, if that's something you figured early on, is it the right table for them? Are they the right player for this table? Is everyone going to be happy if you keep playing? So all the kind of issues you have with home games, a lot of them do translate to making shows because it's the same thing but with more eyeballs watching.
They also tend to multiply it as well because if you have like, and it's you don't really have kind of overly problem players. It's just that they may not have taken on what the world's going to be or what the story's going to be and kind of build a character towards it or anything. They may have done something different. But the reason that it multiplies in a kind of entertainment show is because you've got everybody pulling one way and then one character pulling the other way, and you can really see it as an entertainment factor that, you know, it becomes kind of the table and the DM versus that one person. So when you're picking your kind of, I guess, cast at the time, you have to kind of think of kind of where they gel together and stuff, and realize that it's you are all collaborating together to make a story happen. The only difference is that at home you kind of can work through those problems and kind of come to, you know, a year's time kind of you all kind of were working together. But for a show, a year's time kind of thing of trying to pull against one person or two or whatever kind of ruins the show, so the entertainment value goes down and stuff. So
that touches on a really good point, which is it feels unnatural in a game situation because it's sort of game plus when you add a camera or a mic or any of those things, where it's like one of the things I love about tabletop role-playing games is like anything is possible. You often hear not even about like podcasts or streams or shows, but like railroading versus sandbox or like this versus that. And I think those questions you ask each other as a group before you start your adventure is there are going to be certain times where you feel not necessarily railroaded, but you all have a collective understanding of the narrative you're trying to weave, because it's fine for, if you meet weekly with your home game, to spend 4 of those weeks, you know, messing around, going for a shop, doing this, doing that, but it's like there's only so much the other chair at the table is going to take, where it's like, when are you going to get to the bit I'm here for, which is entertainment, hopefully. What else do we have on this?
We have an image for what it's like to be a home game versus an online show.
Yeah, throw it on.
Good. There we go.
Oh, this is Tone. Yes. So we took these pictures in a pub, and we rarely use the one on the left because it doesn't really fit the show. Whereas we often use the one on the right because we drink beers, brews, alcoholic stuff. It's a bit of a chaos machine. But we took both. And
Paul looked kind of different back then.
yeah, Paul looked a lot like our friend Gav.
So we have Lucy here, who's not with us today, unfortunately. Gav, who left the show at one point. We're on still very good terms at this point. Paul was solely tech, so we recast Gav.
You don't take pictures of your tech?
No.
Okay.
The mustache got out of control.
yeah, there's one picture I think. Which multiple times.
Yeah, we don't have That's
we
for
really
our
need to
private
get
collection.
back together to do another one of these
Yeah.
as the people you see on the show. And that's the other things you start considering. It's like, it's not just the time commitment of every live show, but there's also the time commitment of all the other things that happen outside of, be it marketing on social media, be it kind of just getting kind of assets you can, like we use this a lot to the fact that some of our YouTube thumbnails are just cutouts from this, but like put against something different that makes it kind of freshen up. So there's ways to be smart about your limited resources and then reusing them as much as possible. But yeah, tone is a really important thing because you could have, I'll mention probably things that are far more popular than us. So take, say, Critical Role. Take any of
Have you guys heard of Critic? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they know they are. Okay, grand.
yeah, they're in this niche little group of people out in LA. Then you'd have, say, like Root Tales of Magic or These Sorts of Space, Dungeons and Daddies.
Romancing the Dungeon.
What's on the
Sorry,
dungeon?
Romancing the Dungeon.
Romancing Dungeon, yes. All very different tones. Even take individual seasons of Dimension 20. All different tonal stuff, which means that when people are looking for something, they're trying to find it to meet their kind of emotional state. And we could never do any of the things that those people do because our tone is this, and very much not this. But a lot of D&D and a lot of tabletop role-playing games is this. It's just that's not our strong suit. Our strong suit is this stuff. And it's false advertising if we put that picture anywhere, except for as a demonstration here. Which brings us on to, I think, narrative play. Game, yes. So there's 2 different types of shows you can make, an actual play versus narrative play. What is the difference? And essentially it's, in an actual play, what the people experience at the table is as close as possible to what the audience will experience as well. Whereas a narrative play, you're making more sort of post-production cuts. You're making kind of cuts, edits. You're weaving more of a production out of it. So
You get like a tight, like the Adventure Zone cuts their podcast down to an hour, whereas they definitely play for probably 2 hours or something like that.
And like Critical Role is a good example of an actual play because you're getting as close of an experience they have at the table, but they're also still aware of everything we've mentioned, which is there's an audience there. There's, it's not really, like I said, they're not stopping to order pizza halfway through. Whereas
But
narrative
they do have
play,
people arriving in late from work because traffic was bad halfway through the episode, so it does feel more like, oh, you're at the table with mates. They have the same inconvenience as I have. They're just like me.
they sure are. Then narrative play is a bit more formed. So Root Tales of Magic, as much as it mightn't seem like it, because it is chaotic, is also narrative play because they're trying to tell a story. Not that the others don't, but they've got a very clear focus goal.
This is like the abridged version. You have one episode, is it, of the abridged version? And it's
Yes,
by-
exactly like that. We should use our own stuff. Yes, so we cut together the very first.
Can you tell we're bad at self-promotion?
We put together the very first.
You.
Well, we're a team. The very first podcast or stream, we cut it down to an hour, and we put in music and sound effects and all this kind of stuff. And it took me, no word of a lie, a full week of evenings, which made it unsustainable. I would say it's far more enjoyable for the audience, which is the toss-up you have between. We all have full-time jobs. We all do this kind of on the side. So finding that free time and being precious about your free time as well, because longevity also is a thing about burnout. You don't want to get burnt out. We've been doing this 4 years every second Tuesday, pretty much. I think we're probably as punctual as Irish transport. So we're going to claim those stats of 99.1% of things turn up on time. But we're taking a hiatus because 4 years of this is tiring. You really got to figure out how to stay energized. And if we were doing all the things we were doing, plus cutting together something arguably more enjoyable to listen to, or at least more polished, then we wouldn't be here now. We would have stopped 3 episodes in. It would have been the curse of the 3 episodes.
It's important to note as well, we're taking a break from the campaign. The show we're unsure of yet. We'll be back in some capacity, but we might even be looking at doing a bunch of pre-records, bringing in special guests or something like that. So that's kind of a way you can keep, if you're worried about your brand, you can keep your brand going. And like say, for argument's sake, myself and Ben are knackered. Paul and Keelan can maybe do a bunch of pre-records. So right, we'll bash this out over a weekend. Then we all get to take a month or 2 off, but we still got content going because that fucking YouTube algorithm needs to be fed. There's ways around it. But I mean, if it's also a case where if everyone's run down and angry and not having fun, then just take a clean break if you need to. It's a game.
Yeah, you have to take the tone. 4 years we've taken the tone and kind of gone, what's going to happen for season 2? We're going to take some time and kind of see where our production levels go and where our stories are going to go and stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing, because we've been doing this for a long time, and it's just kind of like, we're coming to the conclusion of our story in a kind of very natural way that Ben has weaved with us. And there's no point in kind of like forcing it even further, because you do have sometimes some podcasts which you feel like they've ended in a certain place, and then you find out that there's like 20-something episodes
There's
on.
a 4th
and you're just
episode?
like, you're just like, what did they do in those 20 episodes? And you've a lot of drop-off kind of thing there, so we kind of want to end this naturally, see what's coming next, and we may even change the DM.
Wait, what?
Have Ben play at the table a little bit more.
We don't want Supernatural season 6 through to when it got good again, essentially.
Yeah.
So there was a
You
very
made at
tense
least
story.
one person very happy with that reference.
That's my goal. But we probably will shuffle things around. We mightn't be as we're into, the reason we're being weird about it is because we haven't really sat down as a group yet. We haven't had time. So that's what the hiatus is for. Right. What are we doing?
Where do we stand on the narrative play to the real time play kind of thing?
We're probably closer to an actual play, but we also are under the time constraints. If we stream from like 8 to 9:30, and so we're really crushing your
With a 15-20 minute break in the middle.
between.
And then
Yeah, it's the classic thing of like, I think it's a George Bernard Shaw quote? One of the Bernard Shaws says, "Sorry, I didn't write you a shorter letter. I didn't have time," and that is kind of us with, if we just streamed for 4 or 5 hours a week, would probably be more of an actual play, but we're narrative in the sense that we're trying to crunch a story. Like Paul said there, it's like we're coming to a natural conclusion. I've never DM'd before this show. I've played, and when I say the big bad of the campaign was the big bad of Arc 1, it's just taken 4 years to get there. It's a very real experience. When it's like, oh, that'll be lovely Arc 1, and then Arc 2 will be something bigger, and Arc 3 will be something bigger, and then like Arc 1 takes 4 years, and you go, this is now the... They suddenly became way more powerful than they were originally in their notes, from having a stat block to statless,
Well,
maybe.
it's the big bad door puzzle problem that everyone has.
Yes.
Where, like, I mean, I think we've all had experience running games. At least I DM'd before running this, and you've always got like, I've got these problems set out in front. This will probably take them 5 minutes. This will take an hour, and this is the big bad for the arc. They never get past this one. It's like, ugh, I guess this is changing things in the background. This is now the big bad guy or whatever. But like, moving the goalposts can be difficult from a DM perspective in a normal game. When you're producing a show as well, and effectively you're creative lead as well, so you're directing and writing a show, and then directing and writing with people on board to be like, does this still make sense? I had this big idea for a boss at the end of this isn't narratively satisfying anymore. How do I move that around, and how do I tie that into the characters' choices that have changed? And spinning a shitload of plates that are probably going to come crashing down, but they haven't yet. So that's good.
Yep.
But no pressure. Looking forward to that last battle.
Two episodes to go.
Move it all together. That's going to be fun.
But I think, sorry, did you have something to add to that?
No, I was going to say we're coming kind of to the natural end of the tone show bit. We're going to move into the techie side of things next. And I'm wondering whether it is a good opportunity to, like, if you want to fire a question now, feel free to, but there's also like a little space at the end to throw everything at us. But just in case. Yeah.
There's a slide in here that you put down. I think we have to blast through like 10 of the. Yeah, we don't want these. But this quote I think fits. Oh no, that's too far. Hold on.
What are you looking for?
I was trying to find the.
feels like the
That's
next
us.
highlights.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
It feels like the next slide is
It's-
actually
it's-
fine and you blasted through all of
Oh, it's not showing the highlights for some reason. I want the.
Clear.
Where's the highlights one? Oh no, it didn't download all of them for some reason. There's a quote here that I quite liked, so we'll move to
Oh,
this.
don't
afterwards.
compare your
Highlights to someone else's. Your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel.
Yes.
Which I don't know why that slide has come up.
No, it
There
is.
we go.
It's in there. It's towards the end.
But I got to the end. Anyway,
Let's
yeah. Let's
It's
talk
all
about
about
some
the
tech.
tech, lads.
yeah. The tech side was interesting. How many people are you interested overly in the tech side of things?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vigorous nodding, vigorous
Yeah.
nodding.
Everyone with a beard nodding feverishly. So, weirdly, myself and Paul will be handling that question.
Yeah.
Oh shit, I don't have the beard. Damn it, I shaved it off. Like a
So,
fool.
so the fun thing is that I'll tell. So Ben came to me in the middle of a party and went, "Hey, I'm going to do a homebrew thing. I'm going to do a D&D show. Do you know anyone who could tech it?" And I'm just like, and he's like, "No, not you." And I was like, "What?" And he's so.
Someone like you, but not you.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I didn't want your precious time to be used up on something. I have a really hard time asking friends to do stuff for me, and it's tough. So I was like, Paul, is there someone you respect? Not at all. That you could just like borrow or lend, and you were like, I will do this for you. And like, you were too precious for this world.
So, but like the reason I've done shows on YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that previous to this and stuff, which is so it was kind of an interesting difference because originally it was just done with a person like on Skype or something that we recorded and everything like that. But Ben was just like, I want everybody to be in the room, and so it was like the challenges were essentially finding out the amount of people, what we had on hand at the time. Kind of thing, doing an inventory and stuff. Now I was lucky that I had a lot of like AT2020 microphones, which are fairly good kind of dynamic mics and stuff and equipment kind of lying around. I say lying around. I spent a lot of money on it. So, but the thing is with this startup and stuff like that, we were lucky with that kind of level of tech. The things that you start with, you kind of have to kind of I guess, weigh them up. So the big thing is that visuals are not as important as you think on YouTube and stuff at the start. Your voice is the biggest thing that's important. You're telling a story, if they can hear you clearly, and stuff like that. And as a person who's mostly a tech and mumbles a lot, definitely know that vocals is the most important thing. So
there's a vocal workshop later on today in the convention as well. Yeah, check out that. Speaking of vocals.
I think an interesting point about that, Paul, is the way to think of it is it's easy to think, oh, this is more important than that or whatever. But if you imagine if you're watching, so this is being recorded, if you were to watch this back and How annoying is that?
Yeah.
Versus if the screen blacks off or whatever, but you can hear me clearly. It's annoying, but it's not quite as annoying. If the audio is fucked, it's
I
no
only
good.
use a smartwatch to listen when I'm running, so like it's completely no visuals.
There you go.
Yeah.
So like that's the thing.
Like a podcast, you say.
So, like that's the thing. A lot of people watch these kind of like Critical Roles and Critical Role and everything like as a third screen or second screen kind of thing. You're listening to it a lot more than watching the visuals. So where you're focusing on at the start of your kind of show would be the audio. Now the great thing is that like Elgato and a couple of these kind of things have brought out some great mics and stuff that are also kind of fairly nice and cheap and stuff.
It's hit kind of the sweet spot between like that prosumer, to put a wanky word in it, but like stuff that's affordable and actually good quality. Like Elgato in particular, the lights are a rip-off, but like the stream decks and recorders and stuff like that, you can
They're
get.
plug and play if you want to use a USB and stuff.
Yeah,
Just for mics.
It's
The higher end gets in decks.
It's exhausting to hear people saying like you can make a short film if you've got a smartphone. It's like, yeah, sure, okay, you can, but like there is genuinely a sweet spot where you can get good and usable equipment for a reasonable price point. But if you're starting from nothing, one thing that we tackled early on with the group is that at the time there were 6 of us working on it, including back end people. And we decided early on, it's like, right, are we willing to all kick into a kitty to buy like a benchmark equipment, buying some cameras, some mics. It'll end up costing us each like 20 quid or 30 quid or whatever it was. Buying with it from the start, it was myself and Ben were like, I will put a decent amount of money into this. There's certain stuff I won't ask other people to because I don't think that's fair. Some are stuff where like, a Sirenscape subscription, all this kind of stuff. But if someone's not willing to kick into that, that should be completely fair because, as Ben said before, we all have full-time jobs. This isn't a paid job. So unless everyone's buying into that and being like, no, okay, there should be more expected of me or whatever. Because if one person's putting in a lot of work and some of the people are dragging their heels and the deal was we'd all carry this evenly, you're going to inevitably start carrying some resentment towards that person, and that's going to carry across to your show and worse, your friendships.
One of the other things we're saying, like, go out and buy equipment. If you don't have the money to do it, one of the best things is to do vocal training, stuff like that. Get yourself a little bit clearer, because most mics, like, you can do it with most mics out nowadays and stuff. It's more clear.
Is there an Adobe plugin now, like a fairly recent new update that takes like crummy phone recordings and like tidies it up from a studio perspective? I heard about that the other day.
Yeah, it does. So it uses Sensei AI kind of systems.
There's a lot of Adobe plugins, but they need Adobe programs to run, so you have to pay for those. And then I think the plugins are paid.
But
as well.
Unless you know a certain black flag waving for it.
But yeah, so if you don't have the money for the equipment at the start or anything like that, and you need to save up, vocal training, get yourself clear and stuff like that. Get yourself used to also kind of, this is public speaking in a sense, so get yourself used to getting rid of some tics and stuff like that, of saying and and stuff like that. Keep your conversation kind of flowing and stuff like that, which is important. But also don't do the Irish thing, which is speak at 100 times your normal, or your speed, your vocals, because as an Irish, that's a very important thing. We speak very fast, so trying to test yourself with slowing it down just a tiny bit and stuff like that is also quite important, kind of thing. And then you can start paying for the equipment and stuff.
Another one to learn is like general mic etiquette. Like sounds like such a simple thing. If you have to cough like this, or if you know you're going to raise your voice to like lean back because your levels are going to.
I should do that.
You should do. Well,
I'm terrible, Mike. I do none of these things.
Yeah.
And
one thing that we are. It hurts me every time it happens, and I'm a fiend for it as well. Crosstalk is terrible.
Yeah.
So if Paul was talking and I was to talk across him, in a room you can kind of discern what's going on. If you only have audio, it's babble. It's just noise that it's unpleasant to hear.
Yeah,
and in the room, it's just everyone being excited. You can zero in on one person talking, but it's just chaos to whoever listens, and it's a really weird habit to get used to. I think a lot of that is an Irish thing as well, because we're just a nation of fucking gabbers.
we're like the Always Sunny of podcasts. It's great. It's so much fun to hear everyone shouting at each other.
Yeah, it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
But a lot of that stuff is, there's vocal training. I mean, when Paul says vocal training, I don't think you need to go to a language class. You can look up these tutorials and be like, how to hold your breath, how to pace yourself. Like, one thing I found is, I still do this, when I start to ramp up speed, I'll just tap my leg, because you lose a sense of how fast you're speaking. And if you're focusing on keeping time, like obviously that's not going to be great audio as well, but if I feel that I'm talking very fast, this will kind of slow me down. I'll be like, hold on, no, get back to this pace. Now I sound like I'm talking at a normal pace. little kind of things to cue yourself.
Yeah, get used to recording yourself as well. Record yourself over and over again, listen back on
That's
it
the
and
hard
stuff
part.
like that. Yeah, I've been running another show for probably about 5 years, and I've never watched back an episode because I just can't stand my own voice, kind of thing. But my partner Patrick constantly is just like, you got to listen to it, you got to this because you got to get clearer, you got to do this and stuff.
A tip that I found really useful was recording yourself, like a little paragraph, whatever, the same piece of text or whatever. Read it back, record yourself reading it back, and then watch it back, and then watch it back with just the visuals, and watch it back with just the audio. And each time you'll pick up on different stuff, like, oh, I say and ah a lot, or I never look directly into the lens or whatever. And if it's just the audio, it's all you'll hear. If it's just the visuals, you're like, why are my eyes darting around so much? And you can. It's not great for the self-confidence, but at least shows you what you need to work on, because if it annoys you, it probably annoys someone else.
Yeah, pauses are a really important thing. They're actually better than saying and it actually lends kind of gravity to what you're going to say next as well. So that's another thing that we're kind of stealing the show with the vocal training kind of later on thing.
I was conscious of that as well.
So what we're kind of saying is, start off with trying to train your own voice and talk to the people around you that you're going to do the show with, or even just your games and stuff like that. Get used to kind of just cross-talking over each other. Get used to finding the cues and stuff between them. Look at the equipment and stuff like that if you can afford it. If you all can pay into a kitty and stuff like that, microphones and equipment like that is very important.
Sound checks.
Sound checks are good. Then the visuals come last, because you have two levels of that. You have the actual cameras to kind of capture yourself, which are nice to add on because you get vocal or visual tics of and cues of stuff of people. Someone says something and another person's just like, it's nice little kind of accents within the visuals and stuff like that. And then the production level of kind of the overlays and stuff like that come last, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Polish on top.
Yeah.
We had a lot of information about overlay setup, which we have skipped for this, but if you've any interest in that, do come find us later, because boy do these guys know how to do it.
For very, very surface level overlays is George.
I said no.
Yeah, no, I don't care. I'm louder than you. But just because people might not necessarily know what overlays are, it's the graphics around it or whatever. It's like the post-production, the gloss behind it. But as Paul said, that's, if you've got special effects but you can't hear what someone's saying, or they're facing the wrong way, it doesn't matter how big the explosion is. It doesn't make sense.
And then the streaming software we use is OBS, so it's a very good system, open source and everything. We've got a fair amount of plugins for our Skype system, which is the NDI plugin. It means that we have separate channels for everybody, meaning that we can pick up each of their. Keelan is quieter than Ben. Wes is probably the loudest. Lucy's is probably the quietest of us all. So it's good to have different channels that you can boost people and change them around and everything. You also get the visuals also on a separate channel as well, meaning that if someone drops out, your overlays don't get screwed up or anything like that. It means that they just disappear, and then as either one of us is broadcasting, we can just remove the visuals. We have a nice kind of background image just to take it, and then we can see when they come back, and then we just swap them back in and everything. It's low production kind of things that you get easier and easier as go on.
We'll be at the bar throughout the conference. If you literally say hi, post-production.
Just
post up, we'll be fine.
Yeah, so because I think the QA thing would be a good.
Yeah, let's jump into. I suppose to summarize everything we've just said.
Found it.
Yeah,
Found it.
Proudest moments.
this is it.
This is worth it.
Don't compare your behind the scenes to another show's highlight reel. And if I was to sum everything up,
Speaking of microphones.
Oh, nice.
There you go.
This is something I learned very on in my career in video production outside of Homebrew. If something is wrong with a microphone, an Irish person, I say this as an Irish person, obviously, would be like, I don't want to bother anyone. No, I can't. It sounds awful, but I'll let them go. Fix the fucking microphone, because otherwise all of your audio is gone.
Yeah, there's an episode where we're live and I'm crawling under the desk trying to fix a wire.
Yeah.
So because there's no camera on me when I was doing the tech thing, so or you might catch it. I think it was probably in the teens. You might see the table move. And if you quietly hear, you might hear me going, "Ow," because I've hit myself off something.
The show was haunted for the first couple of episodes.
Yeah. But you have to as fixing these things in person and stuff like that. If you're doing it in person, just fix them. If you're pre-recording and everything like that, like, don't worry about stopping the show and fixing the problem or anything like that. It just helps. There's no point in kind of having the problem consist throughout your recording. It just wastes.
Yeah, because if the DM's, setting the scene and they're halfway through and then the mic cuts out and then they have this really beautifully described,
Doesn't happen in our show, but in
Never,
other
ever.
shows where the DM's good at these.
But
Kind
as in, you might think, oh, I don't want to interrupt their flow. It's like, yeah, but no one can hear them. So you can have an unrecorded, nice piece of content that's not going to go anywhere. So you're better being, sorry, we actually lost the mic. Can we take that from the top or just go again?
Yes.
Yeah. You'll see that with the Skype show when we started going remote. You'll see, you'll probably catch it because it's buffered and everything. You'll probably hear my voice going like, we've gone for a second because the internet's dropped for someone or anything, and then Ben takes it from the top just to keep that kind of narrative kind of flow going.
Yeah,
So,
I should say as well that one thing about the crosstalk that they've mentioned and the different types of shows is that when we started, we were all in a room with separate microphones. Obviously, in the past couple of years, there were events which led to us not being able to be in the same room, and that changed the way we had to do the stream. It also made crosstalk a bigger problem.
Yeah.
As a Zoom talk or a Skype talk or anything else, the kind of crosstalk problems and the way we're recording it, even with the separate streams, it's harder to do. And if you're not editing, if you're doing live, then it's better to just be on top of the crosstalk straight off the bat. Whereas if you are editing and you have separate microphones and separate things and you're putting a lot of work in, then you can keep certain elements of that in because you can always move things up and down in the edit. So it may or may not be as big a problem, but certainly if you're trying to get everything done all at once live without anyone else coming back and tweaking it, then it's best to just
Keelan, you're
wait for your cue.
100% correct, but you'll notice that neither Paul nor myself, who have a history of video editors, suggested that.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's fine, the editor will fix it, don't worry about it.
I know, yeah. Oh, what I'm saying is just a consideration, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're completely right, but don't do that to your poor editor.
To sum up everything we've said before we jump into a Q&A, is one phrase that applies to both parts of the talk. Invest in sound. Sound people, sound equipment.
So Ben works in copy.
And your sound as well,
Yeah.
your voice as well. So
Yeah, invest in sound. However
Yeah.
you want to interpret that phrase, invest in that. We gathered some tips from other people in the community way back when, but I just think this is a really nice mantra, or just a nice thing to remind yourself before every show, before you publish out onto podcast streaming services, which is, you don't owe anyone a perfect string of good episodes. That's you can often feel like, well, this is just not as good as we want it to be. Let's not put it out at all. And it's like, honestly, you don't. It's think of your favorite show in the world. Think of the best shows in the world. Are all the episodes good? Nope. I don't know. I've
Just
never
30 Rock. That's all. That's all there is.
Invest in sound. We have it up there. Don't worry about your numbers. It's not a good thing to worry about. And we say that with people with quite low numbers. So it's like, of course, it's fine for us to say it. Because the reason you don't worry about numbers is if you're enjoying yourselves, that energy is going to come across, and no one wants to watch people who are bored. So if you're focused on anything except for the fun you're having and being aware of your audience, that's going to translate. Get someone to keep an eye on chat and trolls and interact with your community. We were awful at this at the beginning because we were all in the same room and we didn't have a screen for chat or anything. And you've got Twitch Live and everyone's trying to get involved. We're a lot better at it now because we're now sitting on screens where we can see it. But
it's also we kind of glossed over to the start with the live play versus pre-record. We were very focused on doing a live show because it's a show aspect of it. But we had a couple of discussions about, like, if we're not interacting in chat, why are we doing it live? That's a huge aspect of live chat. Yeah. So if that doesn't matter to you, doing it live is stressful, and a lot can and will go wrong. So if you have having a designated time every week where a show happens live, and anything that can go wrong will go wrong is a selling point. That's great. If you have a live chat and you've got people who are, fingers crossed, active in your chat, we thankfully have some regular people who are often in chat chatting to us. And it adds an aspect to our show because when we use beer names in game, and sometimes people who are, what Ben calls the sidebar, he works in copy. It's brilliant. People will be drinking a beer and say, "I'm drinking this," and then we'll say, "Oh, Emily in chat is drinking this beer, I'll use that or whatever.
Soul Stealer or something came up.
Something like
you
that,
can't
like.
prepare for that as a DM. And like beer magic trumps all magic in our show. So if someone comes along with like, I win the beer, I'm like, okay.
It's great.
Please
That's
invent
died.
that beer.
But
Please,
as
we're
Ben
coming to
said-
the end of the show. We really need this.
But as Ben said, we didn't really lean into that too much at the start of the show, and I think it's an aspect that's increased since we've started doing it. It's hard to bring it in when you're in person unless you've got someone who's dedicated doing it. So just I think that's something to weigh in and factor when you're deciding if you're going to go live or pre-record.
When Hook was going to trial, I texted in that I was drinking Innocent.
There you go.
Yes.
See?
And this helped.
This is
This
exactly what I'm
genuinely
talking
helped.
about.
I didn't have to go to trial in the end.
The gloves did not fit.
One of the interesting things actually about the tonal shift and stuff like that, we started off as a show to kind of get people who are new to DMing
To drink
and to the game into the thing, or into the games and stuff, into D&D and everything. We switched that up to, we still focus on trying to teach people and stuff, but the beer magic thing became an even bigger part of our show. So that's you know, your tone will shift as you kind of go on and you find gimmicks that kind of really work for your group. So
I love the next one, which
This
is
is my favourite.
This was from a friend of ours. As someone who's now paid to enjoy their hobbies, keep them sacred. And it's kind of one of those questions where question one is, okay, I want to make a podcast or a stream or a show, or I want to do something in this space because I see a lot of potential. And like, ask yourself, do I, over the course of a week? And then do it a little bit, and no one's going to mind if you go, okay, I tried it, and I don't want to do it anymore. I used to be an actor way back when, and then I stopped and became a writer. And one of the things that blew my mind, and it was said to me by a friend, was just like, are you following the dream of a 4-year-old? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, and would you trust a 4-year-old to do anything else? I'm like, guess I'm leaving acting then to get a real job as an adult, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's that thing
I
of
had
like,
ice cream for dinner and I'm still in my pajamas. Well, what do you think?
but just because you've put all this time and effort into it, don't fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy. If you're not having fun, that's the pulse. And then we're terrible at this. Promote your show. It's because it's social media and feed the beast and all this. It's just the best way to do it. Actually, I found is don't promote your show. Just be yourself online. Is a good way to promote it because we're all part of Discords where the only interaction you get is we're live, and then they're just there once a week at the same time, and you go, who are you? But I'm way more, and I watch a lot of stuff, I'm way more likely to click it where I'm like, oh, yeah, we had a conversation like just this week about something. Yeah, I'll check you out. So just be yourself, and that's a good way to promote your show, I think.
don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell for any.
Those things. Yeah.
Well, I didn't even know that was going to happen.
I got you covered. It's good.
Q&A?
Yeah.
Quests and adventures?
I have one for you. So, now that you've done it for 4 years, say, as people creating characters and everything like that, retroactively looking back, what do you think is the better method for creating your characters? Is it just the plain blank bones, see where this runs, or giving your DM a bit more of a backstory behind the person that you're creating?
That's a good question.
Yeah. For me, I've recently come to the realization that very small cues, which I had done with Hook, but I think I should have added a few more. I mean, I basically gave him one tick, which was to be friends with everyone he meets, or to attempt that. And I've realized, even if you don't use them, coming up with things like just putting impulsive down on the sheet or other kind of ticks to help in playing, means that when you're not sure, and if there's any silence or anything else like that, you're not sure what your character would do, you can go, well, he's impulsive, so he just runs off and does that. Like, you can make a decision very quickly, you can keep things going, you feel like you're being true to the character. You don't necessarily need, he's an adopted kid, he's done all of this stuff, blah, 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 this is why he's impulsive. You don't need this, like, that much of it. I think you need a couple of keywords because otherwise the RP can get really on top of you. It depends how much you want to be on it. I used to play a lot of games where I wasn't that focused on the roleplay side of it and would just kind of play a variation of myself, which is fun, and that's totally fine. It depends on what you want to be doing with your session, but I found it more fun to play a slightly different character over time, and giving myself just a few cues and sticking to them meant that I didn't have to do very much. I didn't have to think about it. There wasn't a huge backstory, because figuring out the backstory can be fun. You never know at the start of your session what the world's going to be like, so you can adapt a bit. If you know core traits, not even...
Yeah.
And I actually think
That
in
worked for us.
Player Handbook 2 in 3.5, which is deep cut or something. Like they have a very big section on picking like behavioral traits and things that are that's really strong. That's not, you know, that got cut in more recent.
But five
books.
has those kind of organizations and traits and stuff like that,
Yeah.
defaults, like background stuff. But choosing two kind of positive traits, you being wanting to be friends with everybody and kind of impulsive in a kind of positive way.
Yeah, naive as well.
Positive is, you know.
Yeah, but I was going to say, yeah,
Stand.
but then there's the impulsive in the negative way, which is really fun kind of thing, because you have characters who are a little bit more serious than Hook,
Yeah,
and they kind of put heads
oblivious
and
is
stuff.
one of the words that you might obviously oblivious and naive.
But it
were
meant
two
we had a
things that-
story to tell, not a story to reveal. And like as someone who'd never DM'd before, I found it harder with Gav's character, because Gav came with a backstory. He was like, I was here, I got captured by the pirates, I've been this, and I'm on a mission for revenge. And I'm like, cool, great. And it was like a bad DM mistake, which was like, okay, you're sailing through, there's pirate ships over there. And Gav's like, yeah, there. And I'm like, oh, that's like, I'm just doing like a narrative thing where I'm teeing that up for later. And he's like, no, that. And I'm like, oh, we'll be back to that. He's like, no, that. And I'm like, okay, right. But because it's his thing, he planned this, he wanted to do it.
You did dangle pirates in front of him when he had a very intrinsically tied backstory to pirates.
Yeah.
No pirates yet.
And then call
Pirates
him an
after
intern.
your adventure.
I think
We've pirates at home.
Those are bandits.
I think one of the best things with characters is talk to your DM, see what the kind of world
Yes.
it is and stuff like that. See if they want a backstory to kind of help them like put your character into the world, or if they just want kind of you and them to kind of build their backstory with traits. So
I found that coming from DM to player, and obviously I'd run a game slightly differently to Ben would, something I didn't apply to my character, which I regret, is the easiest thing is to find out what they want, what they're afraid of, and maybe a third trait. Those first two will help you inform other decisions. So similarly to what Keelan was saying about, like, you know, you can default to something. So if your character's backstory is they were abandoned as a child and they became a mercenary for hire or whatever, and they want to be famous and they're afraid of fire, then you can have some other small backstory moments or whatever, but you bring this to your DM and then they might go, oh cool, that, you know, fire thing, actually there was the library burnt down in my city, so maybe you were there for that, or you don't have to necessarily know about that. So when something's thrown in, your DM can be like, okay, the place starts, you know, fire starts spreading or whatever, knowing that this is the thing you're afraid of. So it's unspoken that, right, this is your moment, and it's not going to feel like as in wink, off you go now. It's kind of like, so, you know, Paul might be like, what we do? Immediately I'm like, I'm going for the door. Like, that's your impulsive thing, and then you can tie it into different things, and in that moment it doesn't need to be like, right, okay, there's going to be a fire tonight, I need you to lose your mind and freak out. It's like, here's shorthand. You don't like fire, you want to be a mercenary, or you want to find glory. What are the odds of that? Will you overcome fire for glory? That can be something that you find in the moment, versus like, oh, my guy is brave enough to overcome this fire. It's like, in that specific situation, you might be fighting a fire demon, so maybe not so much.
Just fire for glory is so fucking metal. Like, just like, fire for glory.
have fun.
We've
You guys had, a lot of you had a lot of experience, but Ben, you hadn't DM'd before.
No.
First time.
What possessed you to DM when
An
you
excellent
had never
question.
DM'd before?
In front of a camera.
Yeah, the same thing that I think it happens to a lot of DMs. No one else would.
There you go. Okay.
I mean, that's definitely why I started DMing.
Yeah, I took the
I
same
bought,
route.
I bought the player's handbook. I'm like, who wants to run one? People were like, no. I was like, okay.
I guess this is me. But we might do like a little rotating DM moving forwards. We're probably going to do shorter stuff for a little bit. I don't know if we're going to do another like 4-year one campaign. We might. Who knows? Time will tell. You'll know where to find us if we do.
Ben, you said you have a history in acting. Did that play a role in you actually volunteering for DM experience with doing character voices or anything like that?
Oh, you wouldn't tell.
I never drew that correlation, actually. Yeah, you have a background in acting. You've just started doing character voices.
Yeah, I'm not very good at accents at all, except for
Well,
this
it's not that
one.
you're not good at them. You just don't.
Yeah, and it's just, and because we set it's one of those funny things that we set the world in sort of based on, like, our pantheon is Irish gods, and there's like, we're all Irish, but a lot of tabletop role-playing games, your default accent is a very British one. And so in our like pre-streams, I was just like, hey, what's going on here? And I was like, this is a bit weird. Surely they should be like from Ireland. And then it's like the hardest thing to do is like, how do I do a Great Amana accent. Like, what's that? Like, who knows?
As the only member of the cast that plays a character with an English accent, I didn't realise that until 3 sessions in. I'm like, oh yeah, it's set in Ireland.
Well, we had English, Scottish,
really think
French.
We all avoided his advice,
but-
and that was good.
Yeah.
Though one thing I say with Ben kind of having an acting background and kind of doing character voices later on, he was getting used to the mechanics. That's a big thing as well. Get used to the mechanics and the storytelling and everything before you kind of bring in that little flourish.
One thing that actually you did, Ben, that I thought was really good was at one
Just
point,
the one.
just the one thing. Everything else is perfect. Ben found combat kind of frustrating. According to his own words, found it like wouldn't find it one maybe as engaging, or two sort of you'd be pulled 5 different ways. So we had a session off camera which was just combat, and it was like there's no setup. This is just bring your character sheet, the character you're familiar with, and we're just kind of a fight. And the goal of it was for Ben to get his head around combat, and for us as well, because we're not a combat heavy show usually. So it's, you got to use abilities that you didn't maybe use as much, or like, okay, we can figure out how these interact with each other, and it's effectively just a practice, which I think worked really, really well.
Yeah, I think so. We just did a kind of, what I was bad, we actually talked about this on the drive up, is as a player, I'll often add flavor to what I'm doing. So for example, if I'm playing an archer, I'll be like, I leap over a table, I whip out some arrows, and I run and I fire. As opposed to like, I use my movement and I take my action. But it means as a DM, if someone's just like, I attack, I'm like, I feel a little bit like, okay, so you brandish a sword and you slice through them as quick as a puma. I was about to say a panda. Quick as a panda. But
Slow and adorable.
But for me, it took me a while to realize that I'm not stealing someone's thunder in that. That it's like, Wes put it really nicely in the car. He was just like, imagine someone came to you to commission a turn. He's like, here's my thing, and we want you to commission, I'm commissioning from you a description, because that's your job as a DM. So we did that session so I could get better at that, and I just read a lot more action-packed fantasy books, your kind of Conan series.
That Conan book is very handy.
Beautiful descriptions of action. The rest of the stuff, yeah, it is what it is. So we're done.
We'll be here.
Yeah, so that's us. We will be around. If you have more questions, please do find us. We look like this.
We're the guys that look like they have a D&D podcast. Thanks.
Thank you very much.